Welcome back. We now move over to the Western Conference with the Ducks and the Jets. Anaheim has been labeled the favorite to come out of the West, and they're currently 3-0 against Winnipeg. So, guys, why do you think so many people are high on the Ducks this season? Casey, we'll start off with you.
I mean, the Ducks are certainly always a powerhouse in that Western Conference. They always seem towards the top of the Pacific Division and the Western Conference as a whole. I mean, they play very north-to-south hockey. It's very physical. It's very fast-paced under Bruce Boudreau. And I think that kind of system is perfect for Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry. Those are big bodies that have a great scoring touch. And honestly, they're the kind of players that control the pace of the game and they dominate any given game. And definitely a guy who's really helped with their success this season is Ryan Getzlaf, or
Right.
not Ryan Kessler, excuse me, who was their big name acquisition, took the place of Nick Bonino. They lost Timo Solani to retirement over the offseason, so they had to replace a lot of scoring. And Kessler has definitely come in and plugged that hole for Anaheim this year.
Yeah, I think that Kessler's been a great addition for the Anaheim Ducks, getting out of Vancouver where he was a little bit frustrated with the way things were working. He wasn't producing
He wasn't
as
the
much.
only one.
Yeah, well, we know how that is. But I think that he's been able to sort of find himself in a new way in Anaheim. I'm sure he's very excited going forward with such a strong team into the playoffs. Tagging off of what you just said, Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf are one of the most star power pairs of forwards that we have in the league. Two big guys in the Western Conference and a big team. They're, having 109 points this year. I think they were well over 100 points last season too. So very strong teams during the regular season, and I think that they'll be able to have a strong showing in the first round of the playoffs this year.
I think that Kessler is definitely happy that he finally has wingers who can run with him. Because Kessler is pretty quick, and now he has Paul Mary on one wing, and I think that the revolving door of guys on the right wing, though, have all been very quick because that's the way the Ducks are built. So I think that definitely they can take advantage of the fact that Winnipeg is not exactly the fastest team. They're more of a brute strength grinding team because, let's be honest, their best defenseman is Dustin Byfuglien, and he's a load. He's enormous, and he's slow. He's not exactly fleet of foot. So I think, honestly, they can definitely exploit that, and I think that's why the Ducks have been so successful this year.
Yeah, I just struggle to see how Winnipeg is going to be able to topple this giant, Anaheim beast. Winnipeg has some firepower. They've had a really, above average season for them. One of their best seasons so far in Winnipeg.
It's their first taste of playoff hockey. In
right,
Winnipeg.
which is very, very exciting for that whole city, the whole organization. It's huge because they have like the loudest the loudest arena in hockey, quote unquote, and
Winnipeg, it only holds 14,000 and a half people, but they're certainly to be
filled to the
heard.
brim and very excited for their playoff team. And I think it should be an interesting time for them, to be exposed in the first round of the playoffs and, get a little postseason glory going. I'm not sure, how they're going to be able to match up against Anaheim as well, but hopefully we see some production from guys like Blake Wheeler and stuff like that.
So, yeah, it seems like we're talking about the powerhouse within Anaheim. So, I guess, do the Jets stand a chance? What do you guys think?
I mean, certainly it's going to have to rely on their play at home, honestly, because if they're going to win any of these games, they have to win in Winnipeg, because that's the only way that you're going to get back in this series. Because I think it's a very similar series to last year's first-round matchup for the Ducks against the Dallas Stars.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing an inferior team on paper, not without some stars, though, because...
Stars.
No pun intended. I always seem to run into that problem on air. I always seem to come up with some inadvertent pun. But, I mean, the Jets have, Andrew Ladd and Blake Wheeler, who are two very good scorers on the top of their line, and I think that honestly, like the Stars last year had Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. So I think that the Jets definitely have a chance because the Ducks kind of have a lot of defensive lapses because so much of their focus is in the attacking zone that they kind of ignore their play in the neutral zone and the defensive zone. I think that's a trap that Bruce Boudreau falls into quite a bit. So I think that if the Jets are able to exploit that, they'll be able to steal at home. But I think this will be a home-dominated series. I see the Ducks coming out in 6.
And another interesting flaw in Bruce Boudreau's system is his issue with goalies. He blows through goalies when he was in Washington. He flew through a set of them. He's gone through several goaltenders already in Anaheim. So it's like, I'm sure there's a little bit of a lack of confidence maybe for, is it who's starting?
He's got Anderson.
Anderson starting.
He's got too
So
much to know what to do with.
It's very disconcerting, I'm sure, for a goaltender playing under Boudreau, wondering, just how long is it going to be until, I'm sent off to Calgary or I'm sent off somewhere else. So I hope that that's not the final, straw that, gets them out of the playoffs because they are a very talented team and have so many other elements. It shouldn't be just based in goaltending, but I think that that's a big flaw of Bruce Boudreau that has been consistent throughout his entire career.
Okay, so we mentioned Casey's puns. Now the subject of one of Casey's many puns was the Calgary Flames. So they're upcoming with their matchup against the Vancouver Canucks. What do you guys think? We know Ryan Miller's coming off an injury. We don't know if he's going to start. So how do you guys think that series is going to play out?
What's the pun? That they're very hot?
Yeah, I said last time I was on there that they were on fire and
Oh.
that they would burn out. And I was wrong. I thought that they weren't going to make the playoffs, and nonetheless, here they are. So, I mean, I think that, honestly, you touched on it a little bit there. It wouldn't be a Vancouver Canucks playoff series if there wasn't a goalie controversy.
They would not.
I mean,
That's
it
just
wouldn't
not
be
them.
the same. It
No.
wouldn't be the same. So Ryan Miller is coming off of an injury. I believe Eddie Lack has already been confirmed as the Game 1 starter, but when Miller is fully healthy, who knows? I mean, this is the exact reason why they got Ryan Miller, is because Miller is the big-name goaltender at the twilight of his career that was going to lead them to postseason glory while they still can, because that cup window is diminishing fast.
But wasn't he that exact guy for the St. Louis Blues last year when they went on their tear in the trade deadline, picking up Steve Ott, they were like the big name. They got Ryan Miller. Like, wow, this is it. This is a team built to win the cup. Like, they were everybody's favorites, and then they got into the first round and
They lost, yeah. And
Dead.
therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Do you trust Ryan Miller, who has never really had a very good team to begin with in the postseason, but this is really his last chance, or one of his last chances to win a cup. And even when he's gotten into the postseason, he hasn't been very good.
yeah,
We've even seen it on the national stage in the Olympics. I mean, Miller lost whenever he goes into Western Canada, they still chant silver medal at him, which is ironic because he lost it in Vancouver, where he's playing now. So I mean,
it's a little ironic.
it's a little ironic, right? So honestly, I think that that's going to be in the Canucks' heads, honestly, because I think they're going to try and outsmart themselves and try to insert Miller into the lineup, and I think that's going to backfire. If Game 1 goes poorly for Eddie Lack, I think you're going to see a whole firestorm sparking up again with the media with the Canucks.
I just think that the Calgary Flames have been such a fun team to watch under Bob Hartley, one of the best French-Canadian coaches we have. I love the Calgary team. They're a group of young guys, fast game. It's so much youth. It reminds me a little bit of the feel that I had for the Colorado Avalanche last year.
That's very true. Yeah, and they've done it all without Mark Giordano, probably the best player.
Right, and I just think it's absolutely incredible that they've been able to rally and come together very team-oriented and make that final push for the playoffs, get that wild card position, and matching up against Vancouver. I think that they have a very real chance of upsetting and making it through to the second round.
So you talked about how young the Calgary is and the experience that we have with Vancouver. How do you think that's going to play out in your guys' predictions?
I mean, this is the first time that the Flames are going to be in the postseason with the core that they have. I mean, who would have thought that the rebuild would have worked so instantly for the Calgary Flames? I mean, you touched on this before. It is very similar to the Colorado Avalanche of last year in that the young core, the spunky, come from behind victories. They've stayed strong, even battling injuries. And they've done it all the while performing above their heads, really, as far as possession numbers go. Because, I mean, honestly, if you look at all the possession stats and advanced stats, it shows that it probably won't last, which is kind of the problem that the Avalanche ran into this year.
Yes, we know.
I know you're quite familiar with
Yes,
it.
I'm quite familiar with that feeling.
Yeah, so I mean, it goes to show that this is the best chance that the Flames may have to ride this momentum deep into the postseason, because who knows if they'll be in this spot again, because the Western Conference is incredibly competitive. You'll have the Kings breathing down your neck again, and regression shows that you'll probably be going down another 5 points next year. So honestly, I think it's going to be very tough, but I think that honestly the spunk of the Flames teams is probably going to propel them to win in 7. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I guess it is sort of just because my heart was shattered into a million tiny little pieces last year in Game 7 overtime of my first round series against the Minnesota Wild. I would hope that no other hockey fan would ever have to experience such trauma in their life. So I'm rooting so hard for the Flames to win it in 7, and I really hope that they can do it.
All right, so we're going to leave Canada for a little bit. We're going to come back on this side of the border, and we're going to talk about the next upcoming matchup, St. Louis against Minnesota. How do you guys think that's going to play out?
Well, I mean, this is going to be a very frustrating series for St. Louis, if only just because the Minnesota Wild played very well at home, and Devin Dubnyk has been on fire.
Why? How?
Who would have thought?
They have been such a sea of goalie woes the past 2-3 years. They just haven't had no one. They brought Ilya Bryzgalov in. That's where they were at. That's what happened. That's the worst of the worst. When you have no goalie, you just sign Big Briz. That's the solution.
I still think they should bring Brizasota back for the postseason.
Brizasota.
Yes. So, I mean, was this not the same team that got chewed out by Mike Yeo in practice in the beginning of January?
I'm not really sure. It's so strange now that we're actually in the playoffs and that wasn't that long ago that Mike Yeo was he going to get fired? What's going on with Minnesota? People weren't listening to him at practice. Just very strange environment for a team to be in the regular season in that final push towards the playoffs.
And you mentioned it, it's a goalie carousel there. They had the starting tandem at the beginning of the year was Kemper, Backstrom, Harding, and now all of a sudden they acquired Devin Dubnyk, who started, 35 straight games?
Yeah.
He started all of the games. There's no breaks. There's no such thing as a break for Devin Dubnyk.
It's almost like Corey Schneider.
Yeah, I mean, Dubnyk and the Wild play very stingy hockey. I mean, they're the best penalty-killing team in the league, and I think that's going to be pretty frustrating for St. Louis, which, honestly, I see them as a favorite to come out of the West, too. I mean, I think they're finally poised to make a deeper run, but they're going to come out of this first round kind of scratching their heads and a little frustrated because Minnesota plays very conservative hockey.
It's such a frustrating game to watch.
Yeah, but
it's so, even as a fan, you're just
do something. Yeah,
why?
But even still, they have the potent threat of Jason Pominville, Thomas Vanek, and
Zach
Parise.
Parise.
So, I mean, anything could happen in the series, but I see the Blues walking out of it, but not without a lot of frustration.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting series. Two teams returning to the playoffs the second year in a row after disappointing losses last year, both out of the Central Division, which is such a tight division. Lots of competition, lots of tension between the teams. I agree with you. It's going to be a frustrating series for whoever wins it, but I have St. Louis taking it in 6.
All right, very good. So now the last matchup we have to cover is Chicago versus Nashville. We have a lot circling that. Nashville came into the playoffs slumping, and now Patrick Kane is back for Chicago. How do you guys think this is going to play out?
I mean, Kaner coming back for the Blackhawks is huge. I mean, just his presence there is enough to propel the Blackhawks to, I think, a pretty easy victory. Because, honestly, the Nashville Predators are playing about as poorly as you can right now. I mean, they're 6-11-3 since the end of February, and since clinching their playoff spot, they're 0-3-2. That is 0 wins since clinching a playoff spot. So they very nearly lost home ice, and it's only because the Blackhawks kind of tripped and fell at the finish line too that they're going to be holding home ice, which is good in that Nashville is a very good home team. But, I mean, they're going to be playing a Blackhawks team that has Patrick Kane. Even if he is back premature, because it has only been 7 weeks since he fractured his collarbone, I mean, it's still another weapon that you have to worry about for a Nashville team that hasn't been known to light the lamp.
Right, and I think Kaner's injury is it's reminiscent to me of Steve Stamkos's tibia fracture last year, where he was bionic man and returned in record-breaking time. It's almost the same kind of feel for that. Such an important player, such a key, star power. Exciting. Everyone loves him. The Blackhawks fans rally around him. The team rallies around him. That's going to be very difficult for Nashville to handle and contain. But Nashville's had an amazing season, regular season for the most part, despite the last month or so.
It was because of the hot start they got off to at the beginning that they're in the place that they are now. Because honestly, if they had played the way that they had in 2015 at the beginning of the season, they would be nowhere close to the playoffs.
But looking at the goalie matchup, you have Pekka Rinne facing off against Corey Crawford. That's very interesting, thing to deal with. Pekka Rinne, playoffs experience. And Corey Crawford has playoff experience. Corey Crawford maybe not as strong as a regular season goalie, but he's proven himself. It's a little bit interesting.
It's a little backwards. Yeah, I mean, Pekka Rinne is, I feel, a top 5 goaltender.
He's an amazing goaltender.
And I don't think that Corey Crawford is as good as people seem to think. But
he's achieved so much.
By the same token, the Blackhawks have, always made these deep runs. I mean, I think that it is fair to point out also that, I think that Nashville has the advantage defensively and in the goaltending department, but the Blackhawks have such a far and away advantage on the forward front, and they're going to be doing it. Coach Quenneville announced today that Antoine Vermette isn't even going to be playing in Game 1. He's a healthy scratch.
A recent acquisition.
Yeah,
You're now scratched.
The big name acquisition they made at the trade deadline is going to be a healthy scratch for, what was it, Joakim Nordstrom? Who is Joakim Nordstrom? Who is
I know who
he?
that is.
I mean, I know you do, but
Of course.
from a literal standpoint of the rest of the league, why would you try Antoine Vermette for Joakim Nordstrom? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, bottom line is that Barry Melrose, Saint Barry Melrose, has predicted that the Blackhawks will be winning the West, so we can take that for whatever it's worth.
I mean, I have Chicago coming out of this in 5 because honestly, I think Roman Josi, Shea Weber are going to have their hands full. I don't think that Nashville has an answer to the plethora of weapons that Chicago has. I don't know, Heinze. I don't see how Nashville comes out of this alive.
I got to admit, the Chicago forwards have been very strong all year, and I think they will continue, especially with their experience as well. All right, so we'll see what happens with the Western Conference. Coming up in our final segment, we'll talk about the coaching staffs of the NHL and end with our Speak Up segment. Welcome back to This Week in Hockey. We'll now be talking about the NHL's coaching staff. With all the focus on the playoffs this year, there are some big happenings so far with the non-playoff teams, namely in the coaching staffs. Toronto has fired Horacek and GM Nonis. Why did they make these moves?
Well, I mean, to call the Maple Leafs a dumpster fire would be an insult to dumpster fires. I mean, the Maple Leafs were an absolute train wreck this year. It's about time that Dave Nonis left
Just
the front office.
needs to go.
I mean, they loaded up on terrible contracts with David Clarkson, Dion Phaneuf, Tim Gleason, Stefan Robidas. I mean, these are all people who are old, they can't move, and they're making a lot of money, and it's because of Nonis. I mean, it's about time he left.
I agree with you. They have been such a disappointment for Toronto, and that's such a sad thing to say because it's such a huge market, and they deserve a much better team, and I hope that they will be able to find someone that will be actually beneficial to the organization, and maybe they can trade away some of the bigger contracts.
This is the start of the fire sale. I mean,
Yeah.
the Maple Leafs are going to be cleaning house.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the fire sale. However, I saw a few days ago that Toronto has decided that Phil Kessel and both Dion Phaneuf are going to be staying for the upcoming future.
I don't know how much of a truth that is. Toronto media is pretty...
It's hot and cold.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's tough because you would have to find a suitor for Phaneuf's contract, which would be near impossible.
At this point,
And,
yes.
I mean, Phil Kessel is such a tremendous talent. How would you get a return which is worthy of Phil Kessel? And not to mention, he's making $10 million. So,
Right.
I mean, it's going to be so tough to try and find a right suitor. I mean, they're handcuffed, and it's all because of the front office. And the Maple Leafs have kind of hamstrung their rebuild because of it.
Yeah.
All right, so another team that's been making moves is Buffalo. We know they just dumped their coach as well. Do you think they will pick up next year, or do you think it's going to be very
they've
similar?
consistently been remarkably bad. Impressively bad.
Their attacking efforts were
it's
impressive this year.
actually like maybe they should be rewarded for how well they tanked. Well, they will be with Connor McDavid. So
Or Jack Eichel.
or Jack
You
Eichel.
don't
Okay,
know.
I don't
You
know.
don't
We don't know.
The Sabres are embarrassing. They're pathetic.
It's
And I
really
think that,
sad.
Honestly, I mean, the coach that was a given that he was only going to be there for a little cup of coffee. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to be getting either McDavid or Eichel. They're going to be getting a healthy Evander Kane next year. They might be slightly better. I mean,
They're in the Atlantic, so it's not
Yeah,
maybe as hard as the Met.
they'll be looking at Andrew Hammond is the big rumor in the offseason. So I mean, maybe. I guess that the best answer that you can give for if the Sabres will be better is just kind of a shrug of the shoulders.
And it's not necessarily the coach. I don't think
Oh, no.
Buffalo's problem is the coach. Yes, he pretty much had to be fired, but
Your best player is
come
Brian
on,
Giamatti.
come on. That's it's not the coach's fault when you have no pieces to work with.
Personally, I like to believe that Gergensen, the Latvian hero, is going to take them to the promised land in the
There
near
he
future.
goes, yep.
But I'm going to hold that more to myself so I don't get laughed at. Any more coaches do you think are going to be on the hot seat?
Well, not coaches, but I mean today it was announced that the Bruins have fired Ciccarelli finally.
Yeah,
So that's pretty interesting move, not making the playoffs and
I mean, it was about time Ciccarelli went. I mean, he was there for 9 seasons, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Bruins fans were frustrated that seemingly at the biggest moments of either free agency or the trade deadline, he would just kind of sit on his hands and not really make the big move, not really be in on the sexier names on the market. So I think that really kind of works against Ciccarelli. I mean, honestly, as far as other coaches or GMs go, I think that the Flyers might be removing Craig Berube very soon.
I don't know about that one. I struggle to see what the point would be.
I mean, it's tough because, again, the Flyers are in a very awkward situation where they can't really do much because they're hamstrung by their bad contracts. So
Right.
It's not really the coach's fault.
Well, that's all we have for this segment. Now we'll move into our Speak Up segment, starting with Casey Bryant.
Did you catch what happened at the Met game the other day? No? Of course you didn't. Most Met fans are either dead or in hiding. So for those of you who missed it, let me fill you in. The stands were full, the fans were loud, and the Mets won their first 2 home games of the year against the hated Phillies. This would sound like business as usual if not for one thing. It's the Mets. Since when does New York care about the Mets to the point where Citi Field is packed to the brim? They chanted Matt Harvey's name as he took the mound. They apparently even did roll call like the Yankees bleacher creatures. How is it possible that without any major roster moves or even that exciting a team, the Mets have gone from a team where the only player not getting booed is R.A. Dickey to a packing the house with screaming fans? My theory is this. Look no further than the NHL. The Rangers have won the President's Trophy. The Islanders reached 100 points for the first time since 1984. New York hockey has taken off, and fans from Manhattan to Manhasset have something to be passionate about. Cliche as it sounds, a positive attitude is contagious. The Mets' Take Back New York campaign must have drawn influence from the Islanders and Rangers. New York's secondary team has inspiration. The Mets could be out of the playoffs by May, don't get me wrong, but the 7-liners are not going to go.
October 17th, 2015 will be a monumental day for ice hockey, especially for all women involved in the sport. This past Monday, a launch party held at Chelsea Piers in New York City officially announced that 4 new National Women's Hockey League teams will play an inaugural season in 2015. The Boston Pride, Connecticut Whale, New York Riveters, and Buffalo Buttes will compete from October through March in pursuit of the first Isabel Cup championship. The Isabel Cup is named after Lord Stanley's daughter, Lady Isabel Stanley, who is regarded as one of the first women to play ice hockey. The National Women's Hockey League joins Canada's Canadian Women's Hockey League and Western Women's Hockey League as the first American hockey league for women in history. No player or staff commitments have been announced yet, but Danny Ryland, the NWHL's commissioner, indicated that players would be announced later this month. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman voiced his support for the league, stating, "The National Hockey League supports the growth of women's hockey at all levels. We wish the NWHL well as it presents the women's game to a larger audience and provides outstanding female athletes an additional opportunity to compete at the professional level. And they want to inspire girls and women to strive for hockey excellence." Bettman's supporting words from the NHL doesn't mark the true start of a true partnership between the two leagues or include any indication that the NHL will help the new league financially. For any hockey fans, the formation of a new league is a very exciting event for the sport. The fact that 4 new American teams will be bringing women's hockey to 4 major sports towns is something to be very excited about. I personally cannot wait to watch NWHL's inaugural season and can't wait to watch the Isabel Cup be lifted for the first time this coming March.
Sports. How important are they? What do they mean to us, to society? Sports exist in our society as more than just games. There is sentiment and meaning. The pride of towns, cities, and nations rely upon sports for their identities. Sports unite us in times of need and help us get through tragedy. Last week, Johar Tsarnaev was convicted on all 30 counts for his actions at the Boston Marathon 2 years ago today. And it got me thinking, what role does sports play in the healing of a nation? In 2013, amidst the horror and suffering that resulted from the bombing, the teams in Boston gave the city hope and pride. The Bruins made a run to the Stanley Cup Finals, and the Red Sox won the World Series and showed the world just how strong the city of Boston is. This was not the first time in the world of sports that I was able to serve as a means of healing. In 2001, the Mets played the Atlanta Braves in the first game back in New York City after 9/11. Mike Piazza's home run in the 8th inning was a beacon of hope, not only to the city of New York, but the entire country. It was then only fitting on May 1st, 2011, during the Mets versus Philly game, that the chant of the USA broke out as the news broke of Osama bin Laden's death. As a fan, I can say that I believe sports are more than just games. They bear means of escape and healing as we try to return to normalcy. That's all for This Week in Hockey. That's Casey Bryant, she's Janie Pearson, and I'm Mike Hines, and we're signing off.